Bandyopadhyay.
So
It's
Anirban, is that correct? Is that good? Is
Ani.
that
Ani is fine. Ani is fine because most of the people call me Ani.
Annie? I
Ani.
like it.
So it's easy to pronounce it. Yeah.
So Annie, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate you taking the time to have a conversation with me. Would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Yeah. So I am a senior scientist here in National Institute for Material Science, and our objective is to explore materials. So for us, brain is a material. So I came here 15 years back. Yeah, there was a competition here in NIMS. They were trying to find out some project. It was an international competition, and they were trying to find out some project which would concentrate on some ideas that would come to market 2050, 2060. Mm. So, mm, so I proposed a project to build artificial brain, and then that got selected. So from 24 countries, 40 people were selected. I was one of them, and I came here directly as an independent researcher to be converted into a faculty position. So I had the funding and others. So I started my journey for building artificial brain. Um, so from the very beginning, uh, 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 not the integrated information theory or other kind of theories, panpsychism, that that universe already have consciousness and we have an antenna using which we catch. So I think that's just another way of legalizing God.
Yeah.
That's why I feel very good that I am in the ORCO, or orchestrated objective reduction, the proposal of Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff, because then I don't have to defend God.
So the Orcor theory doesn't actually indicate a god in any way.
No, 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 no. It has it is that just that a material called microtubule and its related associated symmetries or nested vibrations. I have also contributed a little bit. I contributed that protein vibration, and then the vibration of microtubule protofilaments, and then the vibration of neurons, and then the vibration of cortical columns. Neuron make cortical columns, and then cortical column assembly to cortex, and then different part of the organs, different organs in the brain, they vibrate together like a symphony, and then it is a different time scale. So this is my contribution to the understand to the better understanding of our core. And so it does not require. So it is almost like, you can say, its closest analogy would be ancient Vedas, in which you can have, it's called, universe is alive, like Virata Purusha, and then life inside a 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 life. So there is no position for God. I mean, no position is left.
So what is a
You,
microtubule and what are vibrations?
yeah. So microtubule is a cylinder. It is a cylinder made of proteins. It has a water crystal inside, and on the top layer also there is one or two molecular layers of water channels. So this is a three concentric cylinders, spiral, like helical structure that you see in the galaxies, that you see in DNA, that you see everywhere in the universe. The kind of helical things, and also you remember the twisted theory of Roger Penrose about the gravitational quantum mechanics, and then different research fields. So similar kind of structure was that came to this planet 4.5 billion years back, when primitive life form was just getting formed. Um, so this particular cylinder actually have many different kind of symmetries. So just like if you have a tuning fork, if you want to create a different kind of music or tunes, so what you do is you harp those different tuning forks, and then you get a specific vibration or frequencies, like do re mi fa sol la ti ta, or sa re ga ma pa dha ni sa in the Indian music. But in microtubule, the beautiful thing is that in microtubule, what you do is you get many different kind of compositions or vibrations, depending on the signal it acquires. So we invented in our group in Japan geometric musical language. So we read all the frequencies, and we found these frequencies, they vibrate together. Imagine somebody is composing music, but but when a musician composes the music, then what he does is he fully concentrates on the on the on a particular set of tune it fixes. But microtubule, when it composes its music or its vibrations, then it looks at what are the geometric shapes. For an example, I want to store a triangle in a microtubule. How would I do that? So what I do is I take three resonance frequencies, three vibrations, three types of vibrations. Say you have three tuning forks, but three tuning forks vibrate in a phase. So when you measure microtubular single nanowire, it's a tiny nanowire. Using nanotechnology, we measure this thing, and also I spent 5 years of my career to build dedicated experimental systems. We continuously improve the measuring systems here in our laboratory in Japan, and and we try to accurately measure what are the geometric shapes it is storing, what are the geometric shapes it's linking. And for an example, I'm talking to you. So what happens is your conversation converts into geometric shapes. Those geometric shapes get into through my neuron firing and goes down to the microtubule, because your neuron, which is considered as the fundamental information processing unit or origin of consciousness in your brain in the modern science, actually things happen much deeper. You can go to the nanowires, and there it was stores into the geometric shapes. And then,
So, so what
yeah.
is actually doing the vibrating? Is the vibrating a measurement of essentially the electrons and the protons, or is it a larger scale like the protons or the proteins? And how are the proteins actually vibrating? Is it a literal physical vibration that's messing with essentially the liquid going on in the proton or the
Yeah. Yeah.
neuron?
Yeah, excellent question. So normally, what people know that neuron sends electrical spike. So what is electrical spike? If you think a tube of the dendritic channel or action or the living cell, which has a typical features of fiber-like features, neuron is that kind of thing. So when electric field, that is a circular ring that goes from one part to another. That is what we know thus far. But when we go to the microtubule, and then microtubule is a protein filament, similar kind of electric field or magnetic field, rings of magnetic fields, they move. It is not electron, it is not ions. There are some groups, for an example, Jack Tuzinski, Mikhail Chipra, there are many other groups who think that ions, they do the processing in neuron. They also do the processing in microtubule. They also do the processing in proteins and others. But in our group, when we observe these vibrations, we do not look into the ions or ion collisions only, because we strongly believe that electron propagation is very diffusing, so they cannot send meaningful signal. But there is a easier way, the way neuron does, because many people think neuron communicates via ion channels. That's a very bad idea. Actually, neuron cannot transport ions through the membrane. It's written in the textbook. I know it very well, but that's a very stupid thing. If you think a neuron axon, the ion goes vertically from the solution to its body, cytoskeleton, and cytoskeleton from its cell body to up vertically. But electric fields goes horizontally. So electric field moves, not ions. So since we are physicists and a material scientist, we do not see it in a subjective way. That's the difference. So even neurons cannot transport ions. I repeat, what is written in your textbook, you are taught. You need to think properly. You read your textbook carefully, and then you will see in your very textbook it is written ion goes vertically up and down, continuous. Horizontally, electric field goes. Similarly, microtubule also electric field, magnetic fields, ring-like electric field, ring-like magnetic field, which transports signal for neuron, same signal for protein complex like microtubule, same signal for inside the protein. There are secondary structures. They are also spiral, just like the galaxies. Spirality or spiral features, vortex features is so fundamentally embedded into the universe that you cannot get out of it wherever you go.
So you're saying that the microtubules create a field, an electrical field, and that field can then transfer the
Yeah,
information to the
yeah,
next neuron? Is it? I mean, is it powerful enough
yeah,
to
yeah,
create
yeah.
a field big enough to be able to stretch that far?
Yeah. So the point is that when you create electric field or electric vortex, we call it vortex. Why vortex? Like creating a field could be just like I have an antenna and I'm creating field all over it. Okay, that's one thing. But when I create a vortex, means I create a ring-like structure like this. So it's a field, but it fills a ring, just like a neuron. So microtubule bundle, there are around 4,000 to 5,000 microtubules inside the neuron. It's packed horizontally. They are polarized, positive and all positive in one direction, all negative in one direction. This is beautiful. So initially, you may think that inside the neuron cell, all these microtubules, all these are randomly jumbled up. No, 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 no. Absolutely not. There is a 50 nanometer gap. 50 nanometer, they are almost touching each other, and 5,000 of them, all positive in one direction, negative in one direction. So you can imagine the amount of power it can generate. So initially, you can think 1 nanoair, what would it do? That when you have a 10 micrometer or 100 micrometer bundle of those nanowires and they are sending the electric field, then that is huge. So we have found, we have compared in Journal of Integrated Neuroscience in 2017, we published a first paper, that what happens actually, to answer the question that you asked, we also asked that question to ourselves. That okay, we took out one microtubule outside, we did the measurement, okay, we verified 1982 proposal of Stuart Hameroff that microtubule processes information, 1995 proposal of Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff that microtubule should process information. It will happen at the single molecular scale. So we are the first group and the only group in the world to measure a single microtubule and do it successfully with that nanotechnology, with the several different kind of technology that we built. Still, we asked the same question that you asked. That okay, fine. Now what? Inside the living neuron cell, what do you do? So we took out the membrane and we went inside it. We created, I have it in my desk here, small, tiny probes. I think I can find. Yeah, I can find. Yeah. So take it out. So this is the kind of mm, uh, probes. I don't know whether you will be able to
Could you
see.
lift it? Lift it? Yeah, right there. Yeah, it's the little the
Yeah, yeah.
silver.
So these are the kind of probes. It has platinum wire in the beginning, and then there is the insulator, and then on the top of it, there is the gold coat. So this is so small when it goes inside, membrane don't understand because membrane touches the gold. So membrane don't get it. But microtubules, which are inside the living neuron cell, they are touched with the platinum, the central probe, which is a nanowire. So we get directly the signal. So we observe what the neuron membrane do and what the microtubule does. So together side by side, because if imagine that if our discovery is true, our discovery is right, then the 100-year-old faith that neuron membrane or neuron skin is doing everything will be totally collapsed. We knew that. That's why we came up with this incredible, nanotechnological system where we can observe the membrane and inside this filament, this guitar strings, we call it. So these guitar strings, what do they do is before the membrane builds up the potential, they send these electric vortices or magnetic vortices all over the network. They looks at that where the electric field symmetry or different kind of information or geometric information or the vibrations, singularities or frequencies, where there is a mismatch on where it needs to go or something like that. So all these calculations are done and then soma fires, boom. So that electric field of the membrane, the much powerful one goes. So the hidden intelligence or the fundamental intelligence is provided by the microtubule bundle. Now the question is, if I dilute, if I melt all the microtubules in a neuron, will it fire or not? Yes, it will fire, but it will not have the intelligence. So it will fire like a zombie. So if you have a neuron with a soma and axon and all the dendritic branches and channels and all these things, if you can melt, it's possible you can add some chemicals and you can melt all the microtubules and then all the filamentary architectures inside the neuron. And then what will happen if you give an electric bias? Of course, it will pass. The electric vortex will pass, but you will not be able to control the fine tuning of the nerve spikes. You will not be able to do that. But since 1920, it has been fundamentally established that mm, uh, actually, when you are trying to understand me and trying to build a concept, your cognition is actually fine tuning of the timing of different spikes. So that is what is giving you the thought process or consciousness. So to do that, that happens in the milliseconds, and microtubule operates in the microseconds domain. So with a microsecond resolution, it assists the neuron to keep the time in a very, very precise manner. So that was our discovery. So it is just one step below the neuron membrane, but I think that we should not stop over there. So that's why I am not 100% blindly supporting the OR-core. I think OR-core is just one step, but I think that we should go down to the protein scale to find out the rhythms and vibrations and then its communications, and even below more and more technology we have. At the same time, we should go up towards the assembly of neurons, how they are singing the music. So all the layers, when we have that kind of analysis in future, sometimes when the technology would arrive. Currently, whatever the best technology we have, we are building the technology, we understand. But I think that this is a small view. The neuron view, which we had for the 120 years, is a very, very tiny view. And then microtubule is one dimension addition to it. But I think we should have many more higher dimension and lower dimension also to get the full picture of the origin of consciousness.
So what causes the vibration and the electrical field? What is it that like if you take one individual neuron, it will essentially fire randomly. Is essentially if it has no connection to the brain and the other things regulating that field, right? So what is it causing the field? If you just take a bunch of neurons one at a time and move them all into a petri dish, will they synchronize in the same way, or what is causing the synchronization?
It depends on which environment you keep. So there is whenever we try to build our own model for neuron and microtubule and other systems. So my PhD students, Pushpendra Singh, he started with the complete brain mapping of Rajat Jain, who 25 years old young kid who died in US in an accident, and his father donated his brain to the UCSD, and they mapped it, and then we took it the entire map, and we tried to understand that what makes neuron intelligent. I mean, exactly the question you asked. I keep them in a petri dish, they will not be intelligent. Then why you put it inside the brain, and what happens magical that it starts thinking? Now imagine it is the same question, like I am asking a flute artist that, look, how do you get music? So he should say, look, when wind flows through the air in the ocean, then it doesn't play any music. When you put it inside a bamboo, make some holes, and put it in a cavity, then it plays the music. Then when it goes, there are many artists who have created beautiful architectures. So random wind comes, and then when it passes through it, a beautiful music is composed naturally. That is the best analogy you can understand to answer your question. So what happens is brain has created many, many different kind of cavities, and they have beautiful geometries. The geometry, one of the beautiful geometry I would like to say is teardrop to ellipsoid. So imagine a teardrop, okay? Teardrop, and then slowly, slowly convert this teardrop shape into an ellipsoid and to a circle. So this particular geometry nature has used uh, severely. For an example, when a protein is a polymer chain, long, long polymer chain, but if you allow it in a particular medium, it will vibrate randomly from teardrop to ellipsoid shapes, and it will create a beautiful architecture. So cavity resonance and dielectric resonance are two terms. So cavity resonance is what? Cavity resonance is just like a flute. So you have a flute and you create many, many flute-like architectures, many kind of architectures. So that creates a field distribution, high intensity field, low intensity field in a very particular pattern. So when neuron gets into that environment, when you fill that empty cavity with those neurons, what they would do, they would fill the field, even if it is random electric fields and random noises of ion channels, whatever ions, whatever it comes, but they will create a high intensity, low intensity, high intensity, low intensity inside the cavity. When neuron goes there, neuron knows what it to do. What to do. So what, as an engineer, as a nature, when you want to design a brain or some intelligent machine for the universe, what do? You don't have to do anything. You just make a cavity and fill the elements randomly. They will go there and make the thing by themselves. That is the difference also in the fundamental engineering of human engineering and the nature's engineering. If human wants to do anything, it makes a tool and then tuck, 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 it heats it, it beats it, and then it shapes it, it cuts it, and something like that. But when nature wants to do it, it makes the cavity in such a way, random noises will pour in, but that they will get organized in a way nature wants. So that particular trick we used to for every single component in the brain, and then we went on creating model for the whole brain, every single component, and then we found how the intelligence is born. So then there is a concept called time crystal. This concept was born in 1970s. So they wanted to explain how the virus is so intelligent. Virus has only few protein molecules in it. It's a crystal form. Forget about human brain and human consciousness. First, explain virus. If you can explain virus, few molecules, after that go to the life form, because virus is in between life and death, right? So how could you do that? You spend billions and billions of dollars to create a new kind of drugs, a new kind of antibiotics, and this kid who has only few protein understands the dynamics of your drug molecules, and then come up next time in its next evolution how to bypass that by making a little change in its protein conformation. How does it do that? So people were very much surprised and shocked, and they wanted to understand it. They came up with a beautiful concept called time crystal. What is time crystal? Time crystal is crystal, atoms put together. Now imagine you can put clocks together in a geometry. Now clocks run by themselves. Somehow, if you pump a noise and the clocks start running, or periodic motion is starting in a system, then that system would run by itself. Now, if you can put a clock and then connect another clock and another clock, it will be an equivalent to an algorithm, but much, much, much more powerful than algorithm, because it can have multi-directional flow. So if you have a clock inside a clock inside a clock, then if one clock has eight hours, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 0. So if you have this, so 8 to the power 8 to the power 8, it is more than the particles of the universe, the complexity you can generate.
So
So
are the
for
microtubules, are those the clocks?
Yes. So for 40 years, those people, many people worked on it, on time crystals. They developed the field. Unfortunately, after 2000, nobody started working on it. So everybody forgotten. Then 2012, thanks to MIT professor Frank Wilczek, he brought this idea back and made it popular. But of course, one very painful thing about his contribution is that he does not recognize the the hundreds and hundreds of scientists who worked from 1960s to 2000. He takes all the, I mean, his associates and others gives all credit to him. But if you go through Winfrey's book on geometry of biological time, it's a beautiful book written in 1977, and you can find how many people worked, and they created, if this clock connects to another clock, you get meander flowers. So they created a concept of meander flower garden as an intelligent system. So we adopted that idea as is and implemented in the brain. And we found microtubule has the ability, several other 12 components in the brain has this particular ability to integrate clocks, manage clocks, and create a self-operational system. So we say the consciousness actually originates because 12 different kind of life form like systems are operating simultaneously. So 12 is a very important number for the brain construction. For the other kind of species, we do not know, but we found that if you have 12 different kind of systems, you can create three different kind of information structures from a single system. So for us, what is consciousness? Consciousness is a machine engine or something which can have three information architectures. So they can interact with each other. One can interact with the environment. One can interact with the simulation of the future that is going on in the hardware, and the other one can evaluate what the others are doing or can play something different. So when you have three different kind of abilities from a single machine, that machine could turn into a conscious machine. I mean, giving a theory of consciousness is not our objective. But we found by studying microtubule that they do it. They do it beautifully. And not just microtubule, there are other things which also do it, like cortical column sheet that you have. There are many people who don't have any brain. If you take a fMRI image, you will find that whole brain is empty. Why this multi-billion-dollar is being invested to create a brain map to reverse engineer consciousness, I have no idea, because there are people. There is a 44-year-old young guy from UK who had nothing in the brain. I mean, whole due to hydrocephalus and something, it's gone. But this cortex layer, if you look at it, its complexity is beautiful. Beautiful. So when we, in 2010, we filed a patent for microtubule-based device, because we are in a material science engineering. So our objective is to build the artificial brain so that you can realize somehow consciousness or somehow self-operation. So it will not be a billions and billions lines of codes. It should do everything by itself. So that is the key thing. How you like, I mean, I never talked to you earlier in my life. I'm talking to you first time in my life, and I'm constructing the sentences which have no idea. The next sentence, what I would say, I have no idea. It's coming instantly from my mind, and you are instantly reacting and sometimes smiling, appreciating that you understood it. You understood it. How is it possible? Have we ever thought? We never created a single line of code. And if you go to Sophia or the most intelligent things in the planet, if it is not written, it will be a stupid thing. So what you do, when you make recording of those kind of conversations, you delete those from the internet so that people don't see. But if you see, they will find that sentences are written at the background, and then Sophia reads them out. Somebody has written it for her. So it cannot construct a new sentence on a completely new concept or new ideas. So just like you are creating in your brain right at this moment. So what is the science behind it? So that's what from microtubule we learned. So from time crystal. So many people contributed. That like geometry dynamics we say. I mean, it is long back in the 1919. It was proposed that the language of the universe is in the geometric shapes. But by measuring the vibrations of microtubule, we observed that. We observed the time crystals. So it's observed in the neurons, in the cortical columns, in hippocampus. Hippocampus is beautiful. It's like cortical column, the cortex layer. That sheet you take and you fold it, it becomes hippocampus. One of the finest machines that nature has created in our brain.
All right, so one question I have is that you mentioned that the
Yeah.
three things that are required for consciousness is one, you have to have a system that can interact with the environment, one system that can interact with the self, and another system that can measure all the things going on. Does the microtubules do
Yeah.
all of those three things, or they just do the one that
No,
interacts with all of
no.
them?
Yeah. Very good question. Unfortunately, microtubule alone can do some intelligent things. Microtubule alone can do, but but okay. There is another concept I have to say. Of course, microtubule has 12 different bands because microtubule has 13 protofilaments. So it has 12 cavities inside that to create 12 different kind of vibrations, and it can combine and it can create three small information architectures, which could be like conscious like system. For an example, Paramecium, it has only microtubules, nothing else, but it's conscious. I mean, it's maybe protoconscious or something like that. You can do those philosophical debates I don't want to get into. But the point is, I have to introduce to you another concept, which is, we call it phase prime metric, pattern of primes. So when we were looking at in 2012, I had a huge piece of, I don't have it here, but I have it in the other room, a huge frequencies of vibrations of microtubule. I was looking at it, and then when I was taking the ratios of different frequencies, then I found prime numbers are very important. 1:2, 2:3, doublet of doublet, triplet of triplet. These kind of things were happening. So what happened is I was wondering. I stopped publications or something like that because I just wanted to learn. I understood that geometric musical language is there, but that is not sufficient. There is something else in nature which is actually doing everything. So I went into primes, and then I discovered a beautiful temple-like architecture of primes and different kind of choices. And it's very easy. Within 3 minutes, I can teach you that. So let's see. Um, um, if you cut here by half, this part and this part are similar, C2 symmetry. If you take a flower, you can find three petals, C3 symmetry. So how many structures are in the universe, or how many times, how many ways um, things happen in the universe which have C2 symmetry? 50%, because 100 by 2. 50% of the numbers are even, 50% numbers are odd. So if the geometric language has composed this universe, then you should have 50% of the structures or the geometric shapes are following C2 symmetry. Then C2 symmetry will be 16%. You can calculate it. 5, C5, 100 divided by 5 is equal to 20. So approximately 20, but it will be 8%. So if you have 50% plus 16% plus 8%, if you go on and on and on, within 47, you will find that only 15 primes covers 99.99% of all possible symmetries of the universe. I repeat, if you can have flute or composition of flutes or musical instruments which can vibrate 2, 3, C2, C3, C5, 7, 11, 13, 19, 23, 29, 31, 37, 41, 43, and 47. Only this 15, you can compose all possible musics that can happen, that can ever happen in the universe. At least if you have such sensor like this, you can absorb all possible compositions of vibrations. So if you have a machine that can have these 15 primes, many places cavities, then what you can do is you can absorb the things and then you can compose. So we did another mathematics. So that mathematics is in the x-axis, we write integers, the number of events given to you. I give you 1 event, I give you 2 events, I give you 3 events, I give you 4 events, I give you 5 events. In this way, I can give you any number of events. And suppose you are a very stupid machine and you don't know what to do with those events. But you cannot hire a software engineer. So you cannot write a program. What you got to do, you got to bring them together in all possible ways. What do you do? For example, 6 events I've given it to you. 2 into 3, 3 into 2. You can put 2 of them and then you have 3 sets, or you can keep 3 of them at one group and 2 sets of that. You get 6. 12. 3 into 4, 4 into 3, 2 into 2 into 3, 3 into 2 into 2, 2 into 3 into 2. And also 2 into 6, 6 into 2. 6 a pack, 2. Or you have 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. So you get 12. So in this way, you can count. In x-axis, you put the number of events given to you, and y-axis number of choices. So if you see that, and then 15 primes rotate 15 different angles, 360 degree, you get a beautiful temple architecture. So that architecture we discovered from the microtubule. And then also from the neuron, also from the artificial cortical columns that we did. So can we go to the other room? I can show you the maps and then the structures we created.
Sure.
You can, yeah, you can come to other lab. So this is so here. Let me switch on the lights. So this is artificial architecture we created, but you can see here the maps, the meander flower maps of 12 different kind of organs of the brain. We theoretically first simulated. This is the whole brain model. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So these are the kind of time crystals. So each of them are clock. And when the clock rotates, then it looks like this kind of flowers, meander flowers. This concept came in the 1990s and 2000.
So the time clock's built from the microtubules, and how many microtubules does it take to make a time clock?
Just one.
Crystal? Just one?
Just one, you can make 12 clocks. So you can make more, but we detected 12, and not 12. In the kilohertz domain, in the millisecond domain, you can make 12 clocks. In the microsecond domain, you can make 12 clocks. In the gigahertz nanosecond domain, you can make 12 clocks. So initially, this is the kind of first pattern of the first map that we created. 12 different kind of systems. We were randomly actually creating the clock architecture for different conscious behaviors and different things. And suddenly we discovered that there are 12 this kind of beautiful architecture. So half of the rest of the half is like this. And then if you make this clock architecture of the whole brain, so substantia nigra, mammillary bodies, membrane, corpus callosum, everything. We didn't leave any component of the brain left. But then we started building this uh, this avatar that you see. So we took organic molecule, we created a replica of microtubules, and you can find this replica organic system we synthesized. You can see it here. These are the kind of different kind of molecules. You see helical structures.
Yep.
You see it, helical systems we synthesized, and when we apply geometric language, geometric vibrations, they change the shape, and then different kind of time crystal comes out of it.
How do you
So
apply the geometric vibrations? Is that like
ah,
changing?
geometric vibration is very easy to. Suppose, yeah, I want to write a triangle. So what I would do is, let me go to the other room. We can sit and then talk peacefully. So if I want to write a triangle, what I would do is I will send three frequencies, suitable frequencies, which are connected similarly by phase, and we will pump it by an antenna. So we have a setup here. Tiny antennas. Okay, so the jelly look like this. Yeah. So they did compute something very complex data, big data analysis we carried out. So antennas were around liquid jelly, and when we pump it, it starts converting into different structures. The structures grow and grow and grow and grow and grow, and like the phase prime metric. So for the moment, so these are the kind of real problem when we try to solve with by pumping different kind of geometric shapes into it, and then let it grow like a microtubule or the neuron structures. Then we do it like this. So just for your sake, I would like to show you something. Can you see this?
The nanobrain?
Can you see this book?
Yes.
Yeah, Nanobrain book. So this is a book I have written. It's compilation of my 15 years of my research. And then the red color architecture that you see on top of it is the phase prime metric, is a pattern of primes that we are talking about. That is fundamental to all structures we say. And then the spherical balls and other things that you are seeing are the time crystals. So they come to the contact of this particular geometric structure, and then they actually form your thoughts, and then they can do it independently. So so this
Independent.
is kind of.
Independently, you mean like each microtubule can do it independently of all the other ones?
Yeah. So independently, microtubule can do, neuron can do, cortex can do. So many of them can do. So I am not an advocate of that particular theory that only microtubule you put and then everything will be done. The consciousness is not like a it's not like a god given threshold that beyond this complexity you achieve consciousness. No. We were doing mathematics. For example, 12 bands, we say that you get the ability to create three different kind of say, if you believe in god or soul, then you will have one machine, three souls. You are conscious. Okay. So now three is not everything, right? So 12, you can have 24 band system, or 30 band system. 2 into 5, 2 into 3, 6 into 5, 30. Say you have 30 resonance bands and they're coupling together, 30 systems. Then you can also have consciousness. But if you go from 12 band to 13 band or 14 band, you cannot create any conscious features. You will create a zombie. So it's not an analog system. It's a discrete system where you can have conscious behaviors. For example, you want to get a, suppose we have a triangle. Okay, three different kind of independent information structures, which is consciousness. Say human consciousness is a three independent structure. So this is Anirban. I can have information structure of Anirban, one over there, and then back over there. Okay. So then these three, say, suppose these three are making consciousness. So as an engineer, my challenge would be, how do I devise configuration I will do so that I can create this kind of information structure which can interact and then do all kind of things to make the consciousness. So it is a very simplest way of putting forth. So we say that phase prime metric, the pattern of primes that you saw, the kind of temple-like architecture, which is integers and then number of choices. It's called ordered factor. So ordered factor was proposed in the 1820s, 1830s. The formulas were there. So you can choose all possible ways. There is no probabilistic theory. There is no assumption or anything. It's just a pattern of primes. It's an absolute combinations and absolute mathematical construct. Now the point is, suppose you have a triangle, three souls, but you can have three souls here, three souls here, and three souls here. You increase, make much more complex than humans. Then you can have consciousness over consciousness, much higher level consciousness. You can construct. So basically, when we are proposing this kind of system, say we call G, our three, it's the most primitive and the simplest. But you can make much more complex systems where one can connect to the environment, when one can connect that particular machine, a futuristic conscious machine, would connect with many, many different entities and then can regulate simultaneously those entities also.
So you mentioned the virus earlier, who has three kinds of proteins. How many microtubules does it have, and how many more would it need to kind of get the human level consciousness that we have?
For whom? For whom? Paramecium?
The virus. You mentioned the viruses.
Oh, in the virus, there is no microtubule. In the virus, there are just proteins. So microtubule has one micrometer long microtubule has 1650 different proteins in a spiral arrangement. But virus have just 5 molecules or 6 molecules of proteins. It's very, very tiny, say 5 nanometer to 6 nanometer, 8 nanometer.
So what is the smallest thing that has a microtubule? The
What
paramecium?
is this?
Is
What
the
is this?
paramecium the smallest thing that has a microtubule as a part of its system?
Yes, it has microtubule, but no neurons, but it is still intelligent. But there are many such primitive life forms who uses microtubule for different purposes. For an example, our centrosome, which works in cell division, so it has a triplet of triplet arrangement of microtubules. So you can construct many intelligent systems out of microtubule. That's why in the last 10, 11 years in our group here in Japan, we have continuously filed patents after patents on this microtubule based engineering systems where we can make extremely intelligent systems. So it doesn't matter whether we fail completely to realize consciousness. And of course, those people who believe in integrated information theory, like Giulio Tononi and others, and most of the consciousness theories, they will hate our work because we say that in the material science, with material vibration, it will be an emergent property. We are lucky that somehow accidentally Roger Penrose and then Stuart Hameroff, they think that it's an emergent. There is a orchestration of all these kind of elements, and then there is objective reduction. So objective reduction, we visualize that with the temple-like architecture. There's some pattern of primes or choices, or we tell it a pattern of free will. So if random events are given to you, how you can arrange, how many ways you can arrange. And then of course you have your time crystal to operate to that. So orchestration is actually the time crystals. So orchestration means many different kind of music will be playing together. So that's like a beautiful clock architecture that I showed to you for human brain, for many different systems we have created. So now our objective in our laboratory, our prime objective is to build. We have created version 1.0. So it actually can look into the environment and we read its EEG and other things. Not a single line of code is written over there. You can talk to it, but its grammar is very poor. But version 2.0 will be much more than that. So our objective is to start the process of a new kind of information processing in the Turing philosophy, which was there for the last 100 years, which is the backbone of artificial intelligence. So it said that every single event that has happened in the universe, every single event that is happening in the universe, and every single event that will happen in the future, you can rewrite it in a tape with a simple sequence of events 0101, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. You can write it. But when we say that clock inside a 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 clock, then we are in trouble. Because if you have a system and that system is not defined by itself, there are some systems inside which defines it. And then you go inside, take one of them and ask, hey, are you defined? They say, no. I have a lot of systems inside, go inside. And if you go inside and inside and inside, and it's an endless journey, then you cannot take a differentiation. You cannot define it and you cannot put it in the Turing tape. So that was a huge problem in 2000 and 2010 to 2012. 2013, we published a paper. We proposed a new tape, okay, fractal tape. Now, if you go inside and inside and inside, people think it is a fractal. But fractal has self-similarity, a word in it, self-similarity. But we don't have any self-similarity here. When you pattern of primes, this temple architecture, it never repeats.
So are the
Nowhere.
microtubules the same across different life forms? Like, are the microtubules in the paramecium the same as the microtubules in the human brain?
Yeah, so they are different. So microtubules have protofilaments. Filaments means strings. So these strings for the advanced life forms like us, any animals, any plants, they have 13. But it can you can decrease it to 6 and you can go up to 19. So why not less than 6 and why not more than 19? Because geometrically you cannot construct less than 6 strings, and geometrically you cannot construct more than 19 strings. It becomes unstable structurally. So what happens is you you find primitive life forms around 6, 7, 8. You find primitive life forms around 16, 17, 18, 19, because stability, geometric stability is much, much less. It's like a Gaussian like thing, and it peaks at 13, where we are. So so of course microtubules are there, but the dynamics of microtubules allowed symmetry, because more number of protofilaments and stability gives you more number of dynamics to be played in. Because yeah, I want to write a clock. How do I do it? So what is the basic fundamental difference between OR and integrated information theory, IIT? So OR and IIT, if you compare, so if these two theories, you will find that all the consciousness theories, they count the number of elements. Number of elements. For example, number of neuron. They will ask you how many. When I propose that we want a conscious machine or something, then they ask how many bits of information do you process, please? That's a nonsense, because if you have a clock and then there are some singularity points, undefined points to hold a triangle, and then you go inside and you find something, 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 my answer would be, sir, I have only one bit. So whatever be the consciousness, it's a one bit, because in the time crystal, you go inside and inside and inside, it's just one, not more than one. That the whole question, that how many bits, is absolutely nonsense. So what happens in the normal artificial intelligence, or in the field of other consciousness theories, where you take all the nodes and you put them together and find how to quantify consciousness, how to quantify intelligence, how to quantify that. In fractal information theory, the kind of theory we are coming from, which is inspired by microtubule, I would not say inspired by OR, but by studying microtubule, we build it up. And then we find that there are some similarities to orchestration and objective reduction. Still, Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff has to authorize it. That okay, your finding is kind of, I feel comfortable, but that has not happened yet. But I mean, I like them. I like talking to them. I learned a lot from them, but but still that has not happened. Until that happens, I say I would like to stay independently, and I would like to say that when we look at a system, suppose 1 million units ordered, 1 million nodes you have ordered, all arranged like a crystal, say 10 to the power 23 atoms, 1 gram mole of ferrous iron, you have a iron crystal. So all of them are zero for us, only one dynamic mode you can store. So total amount of contribution to consciousness is just negligible, zero. But for other kind of consciousness theories, for an example, 1 billion neuron arranged in an array, so they will put each neuron as a node. They will not count based on symmetry. Why do we are based on symmetry? Because our language is geometric language. We use geometrodynamics.
So if you're right, then that would could you look at different animal species, and those animal species that are more intelligent, like dolphins and octopuses and chimpanzees, they would have more strings than animals that are less intelligent?
Yeah. So I talked to Stuart and others, and we have built a equation. It's a complex equation to actually find out um, how could we measure consciousness based on this particular concept of symmetries, dynamic symmetries. Um, but the problem is that if you have 12 different kind of systems, already you get 3 independent information structures. So it's conscious then. And so we have to get the ability in the temple architecture. How far below can you go? It starts from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have found that if you have 440,000 nodes you can absorb, you are quite good to simulate 99.99% event of the universe. But the problem, there is a problem. The problem is, in this formulation, consciousness is not a linear progress. It's not that today you will be conscious and tomorrow you will be two conscious or three conscious. As I explained to you, the three of three topology, that means a massive change in hardware. We cannot realize G++ or G+++. At this century, at least, it's impossible, following our own finding. But the problem is that you analyze 99.99999% because you have a phase prime metric inside, the pattern of temple architecture of primes inside. Your hardware is simulated like that. My hardware is also like that. So the difference, finding a difference between you and me is almost impossible.
So what do
It's
you think? What do you think happens when there's like damage to the corpus callosum and you have two consciousnesses in the same brain? How does that affect the microtubules in the same way? Do they lose a certain level of intelligence because they lose access to a certain number of the microtubules?
So you have now come to a very interesting part of the discussion, that how somebody loses consciousness, how somebody regains consciousness. So what happens is, we have already done the discussion already. The basic discussion is done, and I need a very little time to explain this particular thing. Suppose in the substrate you have 12 different substrates which has 12 bands. So they can create three different information structures, all of them. You combine them and combine them and combine them and go to the top. So you create new clocks, new clocks, new clocks. These clocks, layer of clocks, does not have direct contact with the substrate elements, like corpus callosum, like cortex region, like the hippocampus, like the microtubules, uh, or the pharynx, and then singular gyrus, and all these kind of systems, midbrain and other kind of systems. They don't have direct connection, but these higher level clocks are there. So now when you apply say the molecules, say some anesthetic drugs, or something hits your brain or something like that, and you get senseless. What happens is that, not directly connected to these substrate elements, there are other clocks which connects them, higher level hierarchical clocks. They get disrupted because of their unwanted oscillations, and then remain disrupted. When they again regain back, reconstruct it, you get the consciousness. And when this hierarchical thing is gone, then you lose consciousness. That's what I believe. So that's why suggesting that consciousness is at a very particular component is very mm, strong claim, I think. I think that it's a distributive property which then integrates into a hierarchical level of clock, where you can uh, you can you can give a big thrust, like here, boom, and then what will happen? The relative positions of the clocks will change at the substrate level, and then higher level clocks will disrupt, but that will be happen momentarily. Suppose you put a lot of anesthetic gas in your brain, it goes all over the brain, many places, and then it disrupts your higher level clocks to get integrated. But you are alive. You are totally alive, and everything is fine with you.
So how do the microtubules disseminate between different parts of the brain? So you have the visual cortex, and all the microtubules are in sync, playing the same song in that cortex, right? But they're not playing the same song as in the hippocampus or the thalamus or the any other part of the brain. There's separate
Yes.
systems. They're all working, playing different songs at different times. How does the microtubule interact or limit itself to not be affected by those other systems?
So one thing I said, this answer also I have already given. I just need to bring in. That is, I said you cavity inside a cavity inside a cavity. So what brain does is you have a cavity that is there, and then the meninges goes down to my spinal cord there, and it looks like a teardrop. Your sperm is like a teardrop, and ovum is like a sphere. So I already told you that dynamics of teardrop to sphere is everywhere. Why? I don't know. Don't ask me. But our observation and experiment shows it's there. So this is one cavity. And then there are other cavities in the brain we have studied. There are triplet of triplet cavities inside that this cortex folding. And then there is another cavity, another cavity, another cavity, another cavity, another cavity. So coordinate, finding the coordinate of where, who is there, that would define the specific work that I have already explained. I have already told you that you want to create, you are an engineer, you have to create a new kind of brain and you want to do some work as a nature. What would you do? You reshape the cavity, you redesign the flute, you make it a guitar like thing, and then it will play like a guitar because guitar's cavity is different. You can make in many different kind of cavities to create. So the you can ask now, you can put some other kind of vibrating system inside the guitar, or say engineering a tabla. You put 7 layers of skins on top of each other, so you have one cavity, but you can create many different kind of layers and then many different kind of resonances and many different kind of features. Similarly, brain has many cavities distributed, and cavity inside a 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 cavity, and finally neuron, and inside those neurons microtubules are sitting. So the same way the neurons in your hippocampus behaves differently than the neurons in the cortical columns, similarly microtubule will be different, because those microtubule can never ignore the neurons totally and then go beyond and disrupt it. It should not. So I mean, it's a whole unit. You
But
have,
wait, is the cavity like a physical cavity or is it
yeah,
electrical
physical
cavity?
cavity, absolutely physical cavity, not no, not anything else.
So
So what?
what causes the physical cavity?
Yeah, there are membranes and covers which actually covers it up. For an example, for the cortical column, you may not have a boundary. For an example, a molecule does not have any boundary. If you think of a molecule, you may think there is a boundary. People draws like a boundary. No, 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 no. There is nothing. The nucleus is there, and then electrons are rotating. So electron fields, clouds are there. These clouds and clouds overlap, so you get a bond, and this way the whole architecture is created. But when you apply electric field, the electric field, when it operates like a cavity. So cavity does not have to be a boundary. So then we may call it a dielectric resonator. For an example, a system of molecules are here. And then when you pump an energy, the whole system of molecules vibrate just like a tuning fork. Tuning fork, whole metal is it. It is vibrating. It's a dielectric resonator. So there are two types of resonators. At the beginning of our conversation, I said one is cavity, where you have a cavity which is empty, and then there is solid string, a solid stick, which can have. So you can have a solid stick-like systems, and you put different kind of elements. So the energy will be processed there. Energy will reflect to the boundary and will come back. So we studied it in the computational software, CST we call it. So we put the neurons, and then we put two ports here, and then multiple neurons of the cortical columns, and then we pumped energy between the two, and we found where is the high intensity region, low intensity region, and others. They work like a cavity, real cavity. So it could be that materials together are are creating a boundary. The boundary could be weak boundary. Hmm. Then you have a very uh, adiabatic process, or a strong boundary, or leaking boundary. Many different kind of boundaries could be there. But you can construct. Nature has created boundary, concrete boundaries.
So if you took away the membrane from parts of the brain, then that would remove the boundary, and those parts of the microtubules in those two parts of the brain would start to interact in some sense and regulate each
Now,
other.
inside the human brain, we are not allowed to do any experiments, so we cannot do that. But we remove the brain of a neuron cell to take out the microtubule or the bundles and to study. So because we studied the membrane from top and then inserted pins inside the microtubule bundle to study the microtubule bundle or the neurofilament bundle, actin beta spectrum lattice structure is there just beneath the membrane. Those structures we studied and we published in Journal of Integrated Neuroscience 2 years back. So we studied them. Then we removed the membrane. If you create plus minus 10-degree rapid temperature difference, the neuron cell membrane disrupts. So it disrupts. Neuron is still there, soma is there, and you can find that some rupturing of the axon membrane. And then we insert it directly to touch them to see how it is different. So we have understood little part of these cavity things, but inside the brain with many different kind of components, we could not carry out that kind of experiment because we are not authorized to do that. If we perform these kind of things in a dead brain, it's
Well, could you do it in like a rat brains or something like that? And could you potentially take two rat brains, remove the membrane, and then have the two rat brains synchronized together to create one consciousness?
I don't think that. I think very strongly that just beneath the skull, the cortex region that you have, people don't have brain. People survive. I know, but I don't think people can survive without cortex region. There is a 3 in 6 millimeter cortex region is over there. So for us, we need 12 components. So cortex, that thin layer is enough. We don't need connectome. The whole nerve fibers connecting them. Fluid is there enough. So those people who does not have any brain, everything is fluid. We are okay with it from our finding. But we are not okay if you remove the brain anywhere. So, so that's a very good question because I never thought about it. That absolutely we are not okay with membrane. No, 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 nothing to do with membrane. Don't touch the cavities.
So what
Yeah,
happens to the synchronization if you do touch the membrane? Is it because it
yeah, because
desynchronizes?
because because how do you do localization? It's not nerve fibers that do all kind of address process in computer architecture. You have address code, and then you go from these branches to that branches of the circuit, and that branches to that branches of the circuit. All these things happen, but I don't think that um, uh, that happens in the brain. So how do you get coding? You get coding because you have one cavity. Okay, inside that two different kind of. Suppose you have a big cavity like a beer. Now inside that you have two cavities like a dog and a cat. Inside that cat you have two cavities like a rat and a um,
Mouse?
mouse or some other animals. So what happens is when you try to address the mouse, you are actually addressing the higher animal, and then you are going there and there. So that differentiation, that pathway to send the fields, send the vortex, and then addressing them, how it is being done? It is being done because each cavity, each membrane is giving the identity, distinct identity, holding all the elements inside, giving them a content address. So content address is coming from that mem. So that's why if you delete that, then everything will be disrupted. For an example, many people earlier used to die when you do brain operation, brain tumor, you want to take it out. Now, why they used to die? They used to die because when you take out the big tumor which was already there, take it out, there is an empty space, and then the whole neural network is to get messed up because a cavity resonance and then these things is gone. Now, how they solved it? They take a X-ray, MRI, and then they find out exact shape. With a 3D printer, you can create similar structure with a light one. And when you are putting the brain and then you fill it up, and then your neural network, rest part of the brain remains same, identical. So thus you can save the many patients are now being saved. So earlier brain operation successful after 12 hours die.
Well, it brings up another interesting question. What happens to the microtubules in a cancer cell? Do those also still resonate with the brain, or do they resonate with their own cavity?
Yeah, yeah. In 2015, we published a paper addressing exactly this concern. So we try to understand what are the resonance frequencies of microtubules in the cancer cell brain. So we purchased the cancer cell tubulin proteins from them, and then we try to measure. And we found that their resonance frequencies are much, 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 much more than normal microtubules. So if you are resonating too much, it's a problem. You are resonating too less, it's a problem. You need a very well methodical way of resonating. And then, I mean, if you have many resonance peaks, where do you store your geometric shapes? It is not meaningful. So what you do is you basically you just allow the external systems to go havoc.
So, how are you
Don't
building the membrane? You said you're building a model brain. You're working on that. How are you building the
Yeah, yeah.
membrane in order to store that information for the
Yeah.
microtubules?
So what we do is we cortex layer is the most important part. So we start. I showed you the artificial microtubule, and then those nanowires, and nanowires come together, neuron like. But our mechanism is creating vortex. So we apply laser. Why don't we try to build artificial brain made of ions? Because we have to feed it So if I make a brain made of ions, then I have to give food. And there is a food, there will be metabolism, and after that there will be excretion. So I have to create an excretion system. So forget about my life. At least 5 generations more life will be over if we want to realize it. So we came up with an idea that, okay, you create vortex, we will also create vortex. You follow geometric language, we will also follow geometric language. You are following pattern of primes, temple architecture of primes, that is phase prime metric. We will also do that, but never with ions and something in an excretion system.
So what are you
So,
using if you're not using
huh?
ions? What are you using if you're
Huh?
not using ions?
So we use we create a vortex. Vortex means a very particular type shape of electric field or magnetic field, the rings. Those rings interact and then they create the clock. The rings have angular moment, so angular momentum. So light is coming, and light, you can induce a angular momentum to light. So it's possible. So you can light has an electric vector and a magnetic vector like this, perpendicular to each other, and you can rotate it, induce rotation. So when you induce rotation, if you focus it on the wall, you will find a ring. So this kind of many different sizes of rings, different values of momentums, they are actually our clock. So we create such a material that generates similar kind of symmetry of clocks like microtubule, but they absolutely don't look like microtubule. These are special kind of nanowires. They come together, form neuron, then we come together. So earlier, you heard about uh, neuromorphic devices. Now we have protomorphic devices like protein, tubulomorphic devices like the filaments, microtubule and others. We have neuromorphic devices. We have corticomorphic device, cortical column. So we each and every layer, it grows and grows and grows and grows and grows, and then we put it in the cortical column is the last thing which we create the sheet, and then we fold them to create different organs in the brain. So it's a completely different kind of engineering. By understanding the physics principle, how the brain might have been working. So our brain is a primitive one. It works a little bit. It operates. We can see the EEG images and something like that. And work is still progressing to the understanding. But definitely, anybody wants to make artificial brain. People are trying to synthesize organoids, brain organoids in a petri dish. So they take stem cells and allow it to grow like a neural network of the brain. But I talked to one people a few days back in US. They were saying that it does not have blood vessels. It does not get any energy. It just grows in a random structures. It's not an intelligent structure. And then sometimes it grows hippocampus, sometimes it grows in different organs. Which one would grow? There is not much control, and then the thing goes on like that. So I mean, that kind of research is already there. But humans can produce human brain by giving birth to a child. When my child is born, I'm making a brain. From a single cell, I can see that the whole brain is growing. I mean, that's not the thing. What we do in science is to understand the simple principle, very simple principle, and state it in a very simple sentence so that you can prove me wrong. You can challenge it. That's what science is. So when I will say something that, okay, these are the pattern of prime architecture, this is doing it. You can tomorrow do experiment and prove me wrong. Then I'm a scientist. And if I say
Oh,
something, okay, there is some kind of architecture, some ways, somehow, the way the integrated information theory, IIT, and other consciousness theories are there. I mean, you cannot prove them wrong because every word they use is subjective. Hmm. So you cannot challenge them, and whatever you say, we say, okay, we have also said it. Whatever you say, I have also said it. I have also said it. So I think that my job would be best if, I mean, I know that I will not be able to build a conscious brain, but avoiding software totally, just set of vibrations is giving out some set of intelligence and some set of independent decision making, and then changing the architecture and then building it. It will add to the knowledge of natural intelligence significantly. And then the concept that there is a layer of architectures of information processing. Don't look at blindly on the neuron skin, because of course if I touch it with my hand, I can say that I am my skin is touching it. But there is this guy also, no? So there are things inside the neuron which need to consent. So for the last century, people have been doing, we have tried to bring attention to of the scientific community much towards inner part of it. Then 100 years, people have been believing on Turing tape. Events are linearly, but we are saying event inside an event inside an event inside an event. Events 3D architecture, topological shape. So if you imagine a cube, 8 events are at its corners. You can go inside an event and you can find some other geometrics. It could be a pyramid. Then you have 5 different kind of events connected to it. And then you go inside and inside. It's a completely new way of looking into the same world, same universe. So it's just like a new way of entertainment. So you see it, you enjoy it, and whatever positive you get it. Otherwise, it will be rejected as a function of time. That has always happened in the history of science. That's all it is about.
So how, the geometries, are the geometries a function of the microtubule? Are the microtubules like actually in these geometries? Like, do they physically form them?
Okay, so here is this is a very good question, because Henry Markram Group, it is a huge blue brain project in the European Union, 2.4 or $3 billion project, I billion US dollar, one of the largest project in the world for making artificial brain. They published a paper a few days back. They checked, they cut up the brain, and then they found geometric shapes of many different kind of things, and then they said there is 11 dimension dynamics that is going on. We also say there is a geometric shapes. We also say 11 dynamics, identical. But they came from a different way. We came from a different way. We came, how you look like, I don't care. How you vibrate, I do care. So when you speak a sentence, the silence between 2 letters is is the gap, time gap. And from that, I find out the geometry. For an example, I can ask you, what are you doing? Nothing. What are you doing? Nothing. What are you doing? Nothing. So you can tell nothing, Nothing, 7 letters, 100 different ways. But how are you creating different meaning? By changing the time gap between 2 letters. So that is a silence. And then when sound comes out, it's a bing. So the time gap and the bing actually creates the side of the geometric shape. That's how we get the geometric shape. So vibrations, group of vibrations gives us a geometric shape. That is the fundamental of our study. So from there we grow geometric shape, geometric shape, geometric shape. That means geometric shape, geometric shape, geometric shape means what? Wow, I don't get it. Triangle means three resonance peaks, 3 vibrations together. I understand. But imagine you have another peak of megahertz. Inside that, you can put many gigahertz peaks, many geometric shapes. But 1 megahertz peak, another megahertz peak, another megahertz peak creates another triangle. So then you go triangle inside a triangle. So it's a broad peak of a microsecond. Inside many nanosecond geometries coexist. So it's all about vibrations. Okay. So it is microtubule is not inside the geometry. Microtubule vibrates and the geometry is born.
So the microtubule vibrates and creates the pattern, and the pattern creates the geometry because of the empty spaces, the negatives in the pattern.
Because the vibrations, because okay, I understand your question. Microtubule has arrangement, spiral. Now, when you send energy, it can follow different spiral paths. It can vibrate the whole spring directly, longitudinally, transverse modes, and then the water channel, and then the ionic big chains, Citarmini and others. So many different kind of chains are there, many different kind of elements are there, which can start vibrating. And they will vibrate in synchronous to each other because by material they are connected. That's how different vibrations are linked. So when they peak, three vibrations, 3 modes of resonances vibrate together, and you get a triangle. So it's the way of vibrations that is holding the geometric shape. But microtubule is not everything. The tubulin proteins inside, they can also do the same thing. Or other proteins, ribosomes can also do the same thing. DNA can also do similar thing. But microtubule is important because microtubule has many different modes. It's very rich in oscillations. Um, but DNA has a few number of oscillations. Actin is similar to made of similar protein, but has few number of oscillations because of the structure architecture it makes. So at every level, we have to see how many different symmetries you can go to
So the symmetries are produced by different parts of the protein
of the
vibrating
structure.
together, and the number of the parts that are vibrating together, which happens in primes, is what creates the shape.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. So I think I'm getting a pretty good idea of this. This has been a really interesting conversation, but we've been going for about an hour and a half now, so we should probably wrap up pretty
Yeah,
soon. So thanks again for
yeah.
coming on. I really appreciate you taking the time to have the conversation with me. It was really interesting.
Thank you so much.
Talk to you later. Bye.
Actually, bye bye. Have a nice day.